They say that a mother's love is quiet, so quiet sometimes it gets mistaken for silence. Veralda Myers had spent a lifetime speaking that quiet love fluently, not with words, but with actions, with casseroles left on porches, with shoes magically replaced before holes showed through, with tired hands signing school forms at midnight. And today, she was preparing her final gift. Not final because love ends, but because the chapter was closing. Her son, Rowan, was getting married tomorrow, and even after all these years, the very thought still warmed her chest like tea on a cold day. The cherrywood box sat open in front of her on the dining room table. Not big, not flashy, but meaningful. She had selected the grain pattern herself, solid, polished, reliable, just like she'd always tried to be. Inside, she nestled a square of ivory silk, hand-ironed, folded precisely in thirds, then laid carefully at the bottom. On top of it, a custom wood frame, and inside the frame, something more precious than any check, a printed copy of Invictus. It wasn't just a poem. It was Rowan's favorite as a teenager, one he used to shout, laugh, and whisper during car rides to school. A poem about resilience, about being the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. Veralda smiled, remembering how he'd lean forward from the back seat, eyes blazing, his voice just on the edge of breaking. Back then, he was a boy with fists clenched at the sky, and she was the woman driving, holding all the pieces of their life together. She had saved this poem, waited for the right time, and now it felt like the right time. This gift wasn't grand, but it was honest. It held history. It held her. And as she gently tucked the tissue paper over the frame, she whispered, "I can't wait for tomorrow." It wasn't just excitement. It was hope. It was faith. It was everything she'd built leading to this moment. Tomorrow was her reward, or so she thought. "I can't wait for tomorrow," she said it softly, almost like a prayer. The dining room light flickered gently above her yellow and warm, casting a golden hue across the box in front of her. Outside, the sky was folding into dusk. Inside, Veralda's heart was full. Tomorrow was going to be beautiful. She imagined it all, the vows, the music, the soft clinking of glasses, the way Rowan might glance her way with that sheepish smile he used to give as a kid. She imagined holding back tears as he danced with his bride, Jessalyn, polished and proud, the daughter-in-law she'd tried so hard to understand. Veralda stood for a moment, letting her palms press against the gift box, grounding herself. Then she turned to the kitchen to start dinner, still smiling. That's when she heard the clink. Then the crash. She spun around. Annabeth, her granddaughter, stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide, hands empty. Shattered glass at her feet, apple juice spreading across the hardwood floor like spilled truth. Veralda blinked. "Oh, sweetheart, are you okay?" But Annabeth didn't answer right away. She bit her lip. Tears welled up, and then, in the smallest voice Veralda had ever heard, "I'm sorry, Grandma, but the wedding was last week." The air left the room, left her lungs, left her heart. The silence that followed was louder than the glass. The words didn't land right away. They hung there, heavy, suspended in the space between what Veralda believed and what Annabeth had just said. "But the wedding was last week." Veralda blinked. Once, twice, like she could somehow blink her way back into reality. "No, sweetheart," she chuckled nervously. "That's not right. The wedding's tomorrow." "Look," she moved quickly, pulling open the drawer in the hallway buffet. Her hands found the thick envelope, cream paper, elegant black print. The calligraphy flourished and fake. Saturday, May 20th. Tomorrow. She held it up like a shield, like proof that love hadn't left her behind. But Annabeth's eyes, they were the kind that didn't know how to lie. "I wore my sparkly shoes," the girl added softly. "Daddy wore his shiny blue tie." Veralda's knees buckled. She reached for the nearest chair and sat down hard. The envelope crumpled in her hand. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was deliberate. She looked down. Shards of broken glass caught the light, and beneath them, juice soaking the floor like truth you can't mop away. Annabeth whispered again, "Mom said not to tell you." And just like that, Veralda's world tilted, and kept tilting. Was this real? Was she dreaming? The air was too quiet, the walls too still. Nothing made sense. Everything made sense. She didn't cry. Not yet. Because crying meant accepting it was real, and Veralda wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The moment Annabeth walked out of the kitchen, Veralda stood frozen. The world around her had tilted, but something inside her refused to fall. No, there had to be an explanation, a mix-up, a mistake, a cruel misunderstanding, something that could still be undone. She turned slowly. Her eyes scanned the hallway, searching, needing. Then her hand reached for the drawer. That drawer. The one where she'd kept the envelope, thick, fancy, special. She opened it gently, almost reverently. There it was, cream cardstock, black ink, satin ribbon. Her name written across the front in sweeping faux calligraphy, Mrs. Veralda Myers. She held her breath and unfolded the invitation. Her hands trembled. Saturday, May 20th. Ceremony begins at 3 p.m. Lake Haven Garden Estate. Tomorrow, not last week. Not yesterday. Tomorrow. She stared at the date until the numbers stopped making sense. Then she whispered aloud, almost pleading, "I'm not crazy. I'm not. This says the 20th. But deep down in the quiet place where truth always waits, Veralda knew someone had sent her the wrong version, on purpose. And as her fingers clenched the paper tighter, the elegant cardstock bent with the quiet violence of realization. The next morning, Veralda didn't make breakfast. She didn't fold the linens, didn't answer the phone. She just drove. 34 minutes without music. Just the hum of the engine and the silent storm inside her chest. When she pulled up to Edith's house, the gravel crunched beneath her tires like bones. Edith was already at the door, silver bun a little loose, reading glasses hanging from that old beaded chain she always wore. One look at Veralda's face, and Edith didn't ask a thing. She simply stepped aside. They sat across from each other in the kitchen, 2 mugs of chamomile steaming between them. Veralda placed the invitation on the table like evidence in a quiet trial. Edith unfolded it gently, ran her thumb along the edge, squinted at the calligraphy, felt the weight of the card. Then she looked up. "This is real," she said softly. "This wasn't printed at home. It's a shop print, heavy stock, embossed. But," she hesitated, "if there were 2 versions and only some people got this one, then someone planned it," Veralda finished for her. Silence. Thick. Still. The kettle on the stove clicked once as it cooled. Veralda's fingers curled around her mug, and for the first time since the glass broke, she no longer questioned what was real. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. And somebody in that family, maybe more than one, had made it together. Not just to change a date, but to erase a mother. That night, Veralda sat in front of her laptop. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Even the walls seemed to pull away from her like they didn't want to bear witness to what she was about to see. She opened the search bar, typed in the hashtag Jesseline had bragged about months ago, hashtag #LMaristMoments, and there it was, the wedding. Dozens of videos, hundreds of photos, brunch under ivory silk canopies, laughter in slow motion, guests tossing white petals in the golden light. Rowan, her son, giving a toast. Jesseline, glowing in lace, standing beside her parents, holding hands, smiling. Veralda kept scrolling, image after image, shot after shot, frame after perfect edited frame. She looked closely, then closer. In every video, every group photo, every candid laugh, she was nowhere. Not blurred in the background, not cropped from the side. Nowhere. They didn't forget to include her. They planned around her absence. And in that moment, something inside her cracked quietly. This wasn't carelessness. This was curation. A family photo album with the mother ripped out. A celebration edited to look perfect by erasing the woman who made it possible. Not forgotten, deleted. Before there was a wedding, before there was Jesselyn, before Lake Haven and linen suits and curated hashtags, there was just Veralda and a letter from Boston. Thick paper, crisp edges, full fellowship, graduate art program. Start date, fall. She had been accepted. It was supposed to be her beginning. But that summer, Conrad's car slid off the interstate during a spring rain. And suddenly, Veralda wasn't a dreamer anymore. She was a widow. And a mother to a 5-year-old boy with wide eyes and no father. She sat at the kitchen table with the acceptance letter in one hand and her son's fingers curled around the other. She didn't need time to decide. Boston could wait. Rowan couldn't. That fall, instead of dorms and oil paints, Veralda picked up 3 jobs. Mornings at the flower distributor, evenings at the library, weekends at the bakery downtown. She gave up brushes and canvases for time cards and receipts. And not once did she regret it, because every lunchbox packed, every lunch bill paid, every night she collapsed on the couch in silence meant one thing: he had what he needed, even if she no longer had what she wanted. The thing about quiet generosity is this: when it's done right, no one remembers it was ever needed. Veralda had spent decades mastering that kind of love. When Rowan turned 28 and couldn't secure a loan for his first fixer-upper, she didn't say, "You owe me." She just said, "Use the trust. It's yours." She was the majority trustee, 80%. But she let them choose the tile, the countertops, the contractor. They smiled for photos. Jesselyn filmed the whole renovation for her home healing series. Veralda stood behind the camera, holding her silence like a second job. Then came Annabeth. The birth was beautiful and expensive. Hospital bills stacked up. Insurance only covered half. So Veralda dipped into her CDs. Quietly, paid what was needed. No drama, no fuss. "Thanks, Mom," Rowan had said over lunch, then handed her the bill for the meal and let her pay for that too. Later, when Jesselyn's wellness brand hit a plateau, Veralda funded a small studio upgrade. A better camera, light panels, brand consultation. She didn't sign her name, didn't ask to be credited, she just gave. And over time, the giving became expected. Not special, not remembered, just invisible. It was last Thanksgiving. Jesselyn had hosted, of course. The invitation came in the form of a group text. No call, no handwritten note. Veralda had arrived early, holding her signature pecan pie and a small pair of hand-knitted booties for Annabeth's favorite doll. The house was glowing. Candles flickered on every surface. Champagne already poured into flutes. Jazz hummed in the background. Jesselyn's parents stood near the fireplace, giving a toast about legacy and family values. Rowan smiled beside them, arm tucked behind Jesselyn's back, like they were the center of something Veralda no longer fit into. And then a cousin pointed her toward the folding table, set up near the playroom. Plastic chairs, paper napkins, a tired toddler next to her, someone's nanny across from her. Veralda laughed politely. "It's fine," she said. "Too many guests, right?" But even as she smiled, something inside her dimmed. She watched her son toast with Crystal while she drank punch from a paper cup. She listened to laughter float down from the grown-up table where she once belonged. That night, she drove home alone, one hand on the wheel, the other holding the untouched booties. Back then, she told herself it was just a mix-up, that no one meant anything by it. But now, after the fake invitation, after the wedding she was never meant to attend, she finally understood. It wasn't an accident. It was a message. You built the table, but there's no longer a seat for you. The wedding was over. The seat was never set. The glass was shattered. And the silence that followed was no longer confusion. It was clarity. Veralda sat in her study, the room still smelling faintly of lavender and printer ink. She pulled open the bottom drawer of her desk. It creaked. Old wood, older memories. Inside, wrapped in plastic sleeves and sandwiched between tax forms and utility bills, was the Marist family trust file. She laid it flat on the table, open to the first page. Her name, her signature, her structure. 80% majority trustee. 7 years ago, Rowan couldn't qualify for the full mortgage. Too much student debt, not enough credit history. Jesselyn's brand was still a blog with pastel fonts and no revenue, so Veralda had made a quiet choice. She didn't co-sign. She bought the land, then created the trust, structured, notarized, filed, all in her name. She let them pick the tile, let them post the renovations, let them pretend it was theirs, but the deed said otherwise. Rowan and Jesselyn lived in the house. Veralda owned it, not just legally, but structurally, foundationally, and they'd conveniently forgotten, until now. Veralda didn't raise her voice. She raised a pen. The county recorder's office was quieter than she remembered. New paint, young staff, a man in his 30s behind the counter, cheerful but rushed. She handed him her ID, then the notarized amendment. "Freezing access?" he asked, glancing at the clause. "Yes," she replied. Calm, steady, done. In less than an hour, it was official. She revoked Rowan's access to the property maintenance account, closed the sub-account tied to utility payments, canceled the household card they used for groceries and streaming services, logged into the online portal, and removed every saved payment method but her own. No calls, no explanations. Silence was the message. On her way home, she drove past the walking trail by the lake. She hadn't walked it in years. But that afternoon, she parked, got out, and walked. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. Veralda didn't say a thing. She didn't post. She didn't comment. She didn't clap back. She just lived. But the silence, it echoed. 3 days after the documents were filed, Jesselyn posted a photo, her in a linen robe, chin tilted, tea in hand, captioned, "Nothing hurts more than being sabotaged by someone who's supposed to love you." The likes came in quickly. So did the sympathy, but so did the questions. Someone asked, why wasn't Rowan's mom at the wedding? No answer. Then someone else posted screenshots. A florist truck parked outside of Veralda's home. The note on the bouquet read, "You deserved better." And it didn't stop there. A woman named Nadia, Rowan's co-worker, DM'd Veralda privately. "Just so you know," she wrote, "people are talking. His boss knows. They're reassigning the Maddox project. Not a good look." Then came the screenshot. A group chat. Someone had written, "They faked the invite. That's cold." Veralda didn't reply, didn't react. She didn't need to. Her hands never typed. But her silence typed plenty. And while Jesselyn kept posting cryptic quotes about vampires and toxic relatives, her followers began to disappear quietly, one by one. Unfollow, unsubscribe, silence in reverse. Veralda hadn't taken revenge. She'd simply reminded them what was already hers. The knock came just after sunset, soft, hesitant. Veralda wiped her hands on a kitchen towel, unsure if it was a delivery. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, Annabeth stood there, backpack on one shoulder, braids tucked behind both ears, eyes unsure but hopeful. She looked smaller than usual, softer, more child than defiance. "Daddy said I could stay with you this weekend," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Is that okay?" For a moment, Veralda couldn't speak, so she did the next best thing. She stepped aside. "Of course, sweetheart," she said gently. "Come in." Annabeth dropped her backpack on the floor with a soft thud. Then she wrapped her arms around her grandmother's waist and squeezed, not like a child saying hello, but like a child finding shelter. Veralda froze for a second. Then she rested her hands on Annabeth's back, closed her eyes, and let the quiet wrap around them both like a quilt. The house wasn't empty anymore. It wasn't echoing. It was home again. That night, the house was quiet, but not hollow, not aching. It was the kind of quiet that wrapped around you gently, not to isolate, but to comfort. Annabeth padded around in fuzzy socks, asking where the sugar was kept, giggling when she found the flour tin labeled moon dust in Veralda's handwriting. They made cornbread together. Messy, too much butter, but perfect. After dinner, they played a card game Veralda hadn't touched in years. Annabeth kept score with crooked numbers on a napkin. She won, twice. Veralda laughed more that evening than she had in months. Not a loud laugh, but a real one. Later, she tucked Annabeth into the guest bed, the one with the faded yellow quilt and lavender-scented sheets. Annabeth turned over and whispered, "I love this place." Veralda stood there for a moment, hand resting lightly on the doorframe. The silence was still there, but this time it felt like peace, not absence. The envelope arrived 3 days after Annabeth went home, cream-colored, no return address. Inside was a folded piece of construction paper, crayons smudged at the corners. Veralda opened it carefully, and there it was, a child's drawing. Crooked trees, a rocking chair, a blue lake, a small house with a chimney and smoke curling like a question mark. In the middle, 2 stick figures holding hands, one labeled me, the other Grandma. Above it, in bold purple letters, "My safe place." There were no filters, no hashtags, no edits, just truth in crayon. Later that day, Veralda pinned the drawing above her writing desk, not for sentiment, but for clarity, because love had spoken, not through followers, not through weddings, but through a little girl who knew exactly where she felt safest in the whole world. And for the first time in a long time, Veralda believed she still mattered. Sunday, mid-morning, the scent of coffee and lavender, then the doorbell. Veralda wasn't expecting anyone. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, opened the door, and froze. There they were. Rowan, Jessalyn, tired, unshaved, hollow. Jessalyn clutched a tote bag like it carried her last hope. Rowan's voice cracked. "We just need a few weeks, just until we get back on our feet." Veralda stood there like someone pressed pause on the world. She didn't yell, didn't slam the door, didn't cry. She simply looked at the son she gave her 20s for, the woman she once helped pay medical bills for, and realized they only came back when they had nowhere else to go. Jessalyn blinked rapidly. "Annabeth says she misses you," she added, voice shaking. But Veralda didn't respond. She looked past them to the driveway where their luxury car had been replaced by a borrowed sedan. No more endorsements, no more sponsors. All that was left was truth. And truth didn't beg, it remembered. Veralda didn't say much that day. Instead, she stepped inside for a moment, then came back with a cream envelope. She handed it to Rowan. "Please read this," she said, voice steady. "You'll understand everything." No tears, no dramatic sigh. Just a woman who had once sacrificed everything, now choosing peace. Rowan opened it slowly. Inside, a printed letter, titled clearly, 30-day notice of property repossession. It was legal, signed, stamped. Rowan's hands trembled. Jessalyn's face paled. But Veralda didn't gloat, didn't smile. She simply said, "You have 1 month. Use it wisely." And then she gently closed the door, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because, finally, she had remembered to protect herself. Rowan stared at the envelope, then slowly opened it again, like maybe it would say something different this time. His hands were shaking. That tremble wasn't from fear alone. It was from recognition. He knew what this was, what it meant. Jessalyn stepped back, her face drained of all color. "You're really doing this?" she whispered, almost like a child. Veralda didn't speak. She didn't have to. The air between them was thick with unsaid things, years of unpaid gratitude, words swallowed out of politeness, invitations never sent. And now, the final response. Not a scream, not a slammed door, just paper, just silence. Jessalyn looked like she might faint, but Rowan didn't catch her. He just looked down. Because sometimes when you've gone too far, no one needs to punish you. The silence does it for them. 1 year later, Veralda's mornings start with lavender. Not the candle kind, the real ones, rows of them blooming in her backyard. She wears a sun hat now, carries a tin watering can, talks to the bees. She teaches a memoir writing class at the library every Thursday. Her students, retired teachers, war widows, former nurses, all come with heavy stories. Veralda teaches them how to hold the pen without shaking. She still lives in the same house, but it no longer feels like a battlefield. It feels like a garden. No more half whispers, no more walking on eggshells, just peace and lavender. For the first time in years, Veralda isn't surviving, she's living. A cream envelope arrives. Another wedding, another relative, another attempt to say, "See, we didn't forget you this time." But Veralda doesn't open it. Because at that very moment, she's standing at the edge of a cliff in Oregon, holding her camera. Click. The waterfall rushes. Her hair whips in the wind. She smiles. Back in her hotel room that night, she writes a postcard to Annabeth. "Tell your cousin thanks for the invite, but I'll be chasing waterfalls this weekend." She never RSVPs. She never explains. Because healing doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. It hangs in the hallway, right outside Veralda's bedroom. A crayon drawing, faded at the edges, slightly crooked, 2 stick figures. One tall with curly hair, one smaller holding her hand. Blue waves in the background, a heart in the sky, and 3 words scribbled in a child's handwriting, "Me and Grandma at the lake." She never framed it, didn't need to, because this is the legacy. Not money, not revenge, not even the house, but this moment, this memory. You can be erased from a guest list, from photos, from holidays, but you can't be erased from someone's heart. Veralda didn't fight to be remembered. She simply lived in a way that couldn't be forgotten. And in the quiet of that lavender-scented home, a little girl's drawing reminds the world she was never invisible. She was just seen too late. This story teaches us an important truth. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is essential for honoring our own worth. Sometimes the hardest love we can give ourselves is the courage to say enough. To protect our peace, to reclaim what is rightfully ours, and to choose a life where we are truly seen and valued. Veralda's journey reminds us that love isn't always about sacrifice without return. It's about respect, recognition, and the strength to walk away from those who forget us, even when they're family. True healing begins when we stop asking for permission to exist and start living unapologetically for ourselves. So wherever you are in your own story, remember this. You deserve to be remembered, not erased. You deserve to be loved, not just tolerated. And above all, you deserve to live a life that feels like home. If Veralda's story touched your heart, please hit the subscribe button and join us on this journey of real stories, healing, and strength. Every week, we bring you powerful stories that remind us what it means to live with courage and dignity. Don't miss out. Click subscribe now and be part of our family. Remember, your story matters, and here you are never alone.